A little while ago, I did a video on a project by the name of Cheat, which is basically a way to create and maintain custom cheat pages for your various Linux programs from your terminal. And in the comment section for that video, a lot of people pointed out another project that exists by the name of Tldr pages, and this project is way more popular than Cheat was, so it has far more programs actually being covered by it. And today, we're going to be having a look at Tldr pages and seeing if it's actually a better project to use. While Cheat and Tldr are very similar projects if you just look at them from the outside, they actually do serve a very different purpose. So they both do have the community pages, but Cheat actually has a bit more of a focus on the custom pages that you maintain yourself. So say you wanted to do a cheat page for some random GUI application that no one else really cares about and doesn't really fit with the direction of the community pages. Well, with Cheat, you can go and maintain that yourself, you can write it, and then just store it on your own personal system. Obviously, you could try to get it into the community pages, but you don't actually have to do that. You could just keep it on your own system and just keep it for yourself. But Tldr has a bit of a different focus. So with Tldr, it is entirely focused on the community aspect. So writing pages that are in a very specific format that everyone can use with their Tldr client. A lot of the Tldr clients, from what I've seen, don't actually have a way to view the pages that are written personally for your system. You'd have to actually get them into the community repo, and then you could read them with your Tldr client. So let's not waste any more time and actually look at the project. So this is the GitHub page for Tldr pages. Now, if you didn't see my video on Cheat, you might not even know what a Tldr page is really going to look like. So there's a bit of an example on here, and it's a great example. Once again, it's tar. So tar is a very complicated project because if you want to know how to do something like work with a BZ2 file or a gzip file, the options you have to use for those are similar, but they are still very different. And if you look at, say, a GNU man page, in the GNU man pages, they don't have examples. And this is a serious problem with the GNU man pages. So what Tldr does is it addresses this problem by having these community pages full of examples for various different applications. Now, I say specifically the GNU man pages because with OpenBSD man pages, this is a bit less of a problem, and I'll talk about that a bit more later in the video. But just know, if you've never used an OpenBSD system or never looked at an OpenBSD man page, the OpenBSD man pages are way better than what we have available on a GNU system. So anyway, leaving that for now, if you want to actually access these pages, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. So obviously you could go and download the entire repo or just come to the GitHub page and then just look at the markdown files in the actual repo, but that's not really a convenient way of doing it. What you'd want to do instead is find some sort of Tldr client that you can access from, say, your terminal or from, say, a web browser or however you want to access it, and then view the pages like that, just so you don't have to go and actually update the repo yourself. So this isn't just a Linux project. It also has cheat pages for various other systems like macOS, SunOS, which I've never heard of. I have no idea what SunOS is. Is an Oracle thing? I don't know. And also Windows command line tools. Now, there's a very important thing to keep in mind there. This is for command line tools, whereas Cheat will also have things like keyboard shortcuts for various GUI applications. This is entirely being focused on the command line tools that you use. So if you don't really use command line tools that often, maybe Tldr won't be that useful for you, but if you don't really use them that often, it might actually be more useful then, because when you actually need to go and use one, you probably don't remember which options you need to be using. Now, there's an official Node.js client for Tldr, and I know that a lot of people don't really like using Node.js projects on a Linux system. You don't have to use this one. There are tons of other clients for Tldr as well, and I'll show you two other ways you can access the pages as well. One of them is kind of neat, and I wouldn't really use it on a day-to-day basis, but the third one I'm going to show you is way better than the official client. So let's just get this one installed and see what it can do. So obviously you're going to need to have npm installed if you're going to be doing it like this. So sudo npm install -g tldr. Now I know you probably shouldn't be using sudo with npm, but I've got my permissions kind of messed up with npm, so I kind of have to do it like this. Anyway, now that we've got it installed, I'll just move my webcam over, and if we were to say do something like Tldr, and let's say we want to look at the Tldr page for something like ls. So basically all it's going to do is print out what's actually available within that Tldr page. So as we can see, if we want to do something like list files 1 per line, we can do ls-1. So ls-1, and as we can see, that works as we would expect. So let's just bring that back open. And as we can see, we have things like list all the files with trailing slash added to the directory names, and other things in here like this. So obviously, ls isn't really a good example for this, but let's try something maybe that you're not really too sure about. So something like, say, SSH. So in SSH, you can see, okay, how do we do something like SSH tunneling? Or how do we, I don't know, just basic usage of SSH, or how do we connect to a remote server with a specific identity? Or let's try something else with TLDR. Let's say we want to look at something like NG. NG, if you don't know, is the Angular command line tool. So in here we can see, okay, let's say we wanted to do something like add a new component to one's application, or add a new class to the application, or create a new directive. Things like this. So this is what TLDR is really good for. So it'll show you these basic examples that are probably going to be missing from the GNU man pages, just so you can actually see how to use the application, rather than here's a list of the options, try to work it out yourself. So let's actually do a side-by-side comparison of what the, say, tar man page looks like compared to the tar TLDR page. So I'll just put this over on my third desktop, and let's just open the man page over here for tar, and then let's open the TLDR page for tar over here. So TLDR is by no means supposed to replace your man pages. In fact, that's not even part of the project. What it's supposed to do is supplement what is missing from the GNU man pages by actually including things like basic examples of how to use the application. If you need to, say, have something a bit more complex that maybe you don't really use that often, come over to the man page and see, okay, well, I want to do something like, I don't know, what's something that you don't really use too often? Let's get down to the options. So something like concatenating two archives together. Generally, that's not something you're really going to use, so that doesn't really need to be in the TLDR pages. It could be added, but it doesn't necessarily need to be there. What the TLDR pages need to have is just how to do things like, how do I create an archive, how do I create a gzipped archive, how do I extract an archive, things that you're commonly going to use with the application, which aren't properly explained by the GNU man pages. Now, obviously, you could read the GNU man pages and work out how to do things like create a gzipped archive. Obviously, you would have had to do that to work out what options to use here. But a lot of the time, you don't really want to spend the effort wasting time just reading through the man pages when all you want to do is know how to create an archive. It'd be much easier to see, okay, this is exactly how I do it. And if I wanted to know more about the options that I have to use, then afterwards I could go and look at the man page and say, okay, well, this option does this option does this, and this option does this. So man pages have more of a focus on explaining what every single individual option does, whereas with the TLDR pages, it's more about how do I actually use the program. But that's only true in the context of a GNU man page. Now, I've been saying since the start that the OpenBSD man pages are way better, so let's actually have a look at an example of why they are better. So I've got the OpenBSD man page for tar open here, and as you can see, so at the top we have the name, we have the synopsis, and then we have the description, and we're straight into describing what the options actually are. If we go back over to the GNU man page though, we have all of this junk up here, and we have to keep scrolling down, we have notes about it, and then we have the description. The description is really long for whatever reason, and then we keep going down, and then we're finally at the options. Now, this isn't the only reason why the OpenBSD man pages are better. The other reason they're better is if we go all the way down to the bottom, we have this right here. So on the OpenBSD man page for tar, it has examples of how to actually use tar. And this isn't just a thing on the tar man page. This is also true on sed and awk and on a bunch of other utilities like that. So the OpenBSD man pages sort of have a smaller version of what TLDR has just built into them, which just make them way more useful to use. Now, obviously, this does make something like TLDR and cheat a little bit less useful on an OpenBSD system, but that doesn't mean that they're completely useless, because as you can see, there's only a couple of options in here. There's a lot of stuff you could still include that are included within the TLDR page. So even though there are some examples in the OpenBSD man pages, and they are better than the GNU man pages, there's still a place for something like TLDR on an OpenBSD system. So how else can we actually access the TLDR pages? Well, you might notice that I have a tab with DuckDuckGo open right now, and this is something I found out pretty recently. So if we type in something like TLDR and then, I don't know, SSH. So as you can see, we have the TLDR page for SSH just in DuckDuckGo. Or we could do it for something like, I don't know, tar. And as you can see, we have the tar page right here. Or we can do it for ls, or we could do it for, I don't know, various other programs. URXVT, does that have one? I presume it does. I don't know. No, that one doesn't. Okay, that was a bad example then. But as you can see, if you type in TLDR and then something that's in the TLDR pages, it will just show up within DuckDuckGo. Now, this is the example that I said was pretty neat. If I'm working on something from my terminal, I don't want to have to open up a web browser just to see some examples for it. So while this is cool, I'm not really going to use it on a day-to-day basis. But if I just had DuckDuckGo open anyways, then this is actually kind of a neat way to get some extra information about some random utilities. Now, before we end off the video, let's just have a look at the better way to access the TLDR pages. So this is a project written in Go called TLDR++. Now, I would have thought that it was going to be written in C++ because it was called TLDR++, but whatever. It's written in Go, which is fine. Go is a great language, I just want to criticize them for the name. So the reason why this client is way better than the NPM client is because let's say you wanted to use a command for tar, and you search for tar in TLDR, and you're like, okay, well, I like this command right here. Normally, what you'd have to do with TLDR is go and write out the command yourself or just copy it from the TLDR page. But what you can do with TLDR++, as you can see in the GIF that's going on right now, is you can select the command from the client and then start filling in the options that you want to use. So if you wanted to do something like move a file, then you could select the move command and then fill in the values that go along with it, and then run it directly from the TLDR client without having to go and copy the command or manually write it out yourself, which just makes it a little bit easier to use. Now, if you've been following along with this video, make sure you go and uninstall the first TLDR client we used, because this one, its binary is named the exact same as that first project we used. So if you try to install this one while that one's installed, bad things are going to happen. Now, being on Arch Linux, we can install this from the AUR, so what we're going to do is just go yay-s TLDR++. And then this is going to take a little bit of time to install, so I'm just going to cut ahead to when this is done. So let's go and test this out. So what we're going to be doing is the same thing we did before, so just run TLDR and then whatever program you want to look at. So let's do it for something like, say, CP. Now, as you can see, anything that is highlighted in light blue on my system, or I guess cyan, is something that requires an argument to be put there. So let's say we wanted to do something like copy a file to another location. Let's just select this one. We can select this with either Vim keys or arrow keys, whichever one you want to use, and let's just press enter on this one. So we have to fill in an argument here. So let's say if we press tab, this is going to bring up a little prompt to select what we want to actually fill in. So we can fill in something like, say, my bashrc file, and then I press enter on this, and then it will take you to the second argument. And let's say we're going to copy it into the same place, but we're going to copy it with a different name. So let's just call it bashrc2 or something like that. Then if you press enter here, it'll prompt you if you want to run the command. So I'm just going to press yes, and then it's run the command. So if we just go and have a look in LF, let's go down to bashrc, we have the bashrc. So we have the bashrc and we have bashrc2. So that seems to have run perfectly fine. So you can do this for any program you want to run. Obviously, make sure you fill the arguments in correctly, because once you've run it, the program is going to be run. So if you do something maybe kind of dangerous from it, like, I don't know, you want to move something that's in your root directory, maybe don't do that through this program just in case something does go wrong. But for anything else that is either non-destructive or something you can very easily recover from, maybe it's going to be fine to actually run it from the TLDR client. And one other thing you can do is run TLDR without any arguments. And what that's going to do is basically let you search across all of the TLDR pages. So let's say we wanted to search for something like, I don't know, gzip2. So what this is going to do is bring up every single instance of something that mentions gzip2. So I'm not actually sure how it matches in some cases. So this one right here doesn't have gzip2 in it, so it might actually just be matching on anything that contains any of these characters, because this doesn't say gzip2 in it. Maybe it says, no, it doesn't have a G in it either, so I'm not sure why this one's coming up. Maybe it's the 2 that's causing it to come up. I'm not too sure on what's happening there, but at the top here we have create a gzip archive, or we have this one right here for parallel, gzip several files at once using all cores, and then a bunch of other stuff. So let's search for something else. Let's search for list all files or something like that. So recursively list all files installed by a package, list all files installed by a package. Do we have stuff in here for Pacman? I actually have no idea. So Pacman, yes we do. So remove a package and its dependencies, search the package database, and a bunch of other cool stuff in here as well. So I think that's pretty much everything for this video. Now, if all you're considering is the sheer number of pages that are included within the project, obviously TLDR is way better of a choice, and TLDR has way more people working on it, so there's going to be more and more updates to the pages and more new pages. So If all you care about is the sheer number of pages and the sheer number of programs that are covered, TLDR is the obvious choice, but Cheat does have a few advantages in the way that you can maintain custom cheat pages. But if all you need is custom cheat pages, what you can do is download Cheat and then not install the community repos and then use TLDR for the community repos that are in TLDR. So then you basically just get the best of both worlds. So if you care about the programs that I use on my system, I'm personally going to continue using TLDR because obviously it has way more things in its project and I generally don't really see much of a use for the custom pages. So for me, TLDR is just the obvious choice. And I think that's pretty much everything for this, but before I go, I want to thank my patrons. So a special thank you to Joachim, Nathan, Andrew, Montazar, Tldr, Brodie, Tony, Larry, and Zilver. If you want to join the Patreon, there'll be a link to that down below, as well as my Amazon affiliate links where you can buy the gear I use in this channel, or anything else you want, and I'll get a small kickback for it. Also, remember to go check out my podcast. That is Tech Over Tea, available on Library and YouTube, and the audio version available wherever you listen to audio podcasts. Also, remember to check out this channel, available on Library, BitTube, and also BitChute. And remember to smash the like button and leave me a comment down below. And remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below as well. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.